Mzansi, welcome back. It's your Feel Good Breakfast Show, and we are hopefully going to make you feel a little bit better. Now, we're talking about a very, very pertinent subject right now, something that I know we all might have dealt with or are dealing with at the moment. We're talking about depression. And depression simply does not discriminate. It knows no gender, no age, no race, and no ethnic background. Now, anybody around the world can experience it. And the fact that we all experience depression is, to some degree, what might be the one thing that we all possibly have in common. We all just experience it differently and cope with it differently too. But how do different cultures view, treat, and accept depression? Well, these are interesting questions, and of course, we've brought an incredible panel through this morning. Here with us today, we have a panel of experts to shed some light on this daunting topic. We've got counsellors Ashley Lawrence, we've got Sarah Everett, we've got Nibokazi Mtati, we've got Danielle Meyer, as well as Aluta Kibi, and is also a psychologist and a clinical psychologist at that. So let us do a little welcome firstly to this incredible panel that we have so many faces that I think can definitely shed light on this topic. We're talking about depression. I think, like I said, everybody's dealt with this, right? Yeah. You guys see it in your daily working lives in so many different forms. Bokazi, maybe I can ask you this. Despite the culture, I think there's this apparent thing that we all do face depression, right? Maybe you can talk to me about some of the causes of depression and how they maybe affect us?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And as you've said, it doesn't discriminate.
Yeah.
So it can affect anyone from any walks of life. So some of the causes of depression, I think, there's a wide range of factors that are involved. Firstly, there is a chemical imbalance, but we also look at predisposing factors. So what made this person vulnerable to developing depression in the first place? And when we look at those issues, we look at your childhood issues. Could be childhood neglect, could be being bullied at school, it could be exposure to domestic violence at home. So all of those issues impact on the developing child. And then they are more likely or more vulnerable to developing a major depressive episode. So as an adult, so there's many factors that can cause depression: unemployment, divorce, relationship issues, financial struggles. So all of that can impact on an individual and can cause a major depressive episode.
So in the world that we're in right now, where there's literally chaos around us, these are external influences that could potentially also exacerbate this, right?
Definitely. Yeah, and it all impacts us in different ways.
Yeah, now, I know that it impacts us, and I know one thing is great when you can identify it and you're aware of it, which is already a massive step forward. Yeah. Danielle, maybe you can assist me with this. What are some of the support options and systems in place if we're lucky enough to identify the fact that, hey, I'm dealing with depression, I need help? What are those options for us?
Right, so when we're looking at mental health through a cultural lens, right, we also need to be aware that mental health can be viewed differently based on that particular culture. So some cultures might be more open to early intervention, early treatment, other cultures might not. But support systems could vary. Identifying a support system could vary. So this could be in the form of seeking help from a mental health practitioner. It could be a trusted pastor, trusted support figure. But, for me, it's really important that we focus on psychoeducation within the communities.
Psychoeducation,
Yes, actually educating our communities and our family members how to identify the signs and symptoms of depression so they can get that support and know how to support a loved one.
All right, so I've got this question, Sarah, maybe we're going to ask you this, because in my culture, let's call it that, there was no such thing as mental problems. It was, ruk yourself reg. Come right, eat concrete, and deal with it. Or toughen up. That was the solution I was given. I was like, okay, I guess we don't really speak about my feelings in this culture. And even with my family and my parents as well, it was hard, just deal, this is life, deal with it. Is this a big component of how culture can affect, let's say, our mental state, number one, and our potential to develop depression at that?
Absolutely. I think I can speak from maybe my experience as a school counsellor.
Yeah.
Working at an international school, you've got such a vast range of nationalities and how a lot of cultures don't even have the word for depression.
Yes.
So recognizing that there is actually something wrong. It takes quite a while to get there, like you had said, once you actually have the privilege of knowing. But in terms of how this is viewed, you need to take on the view, not just that it's the culture, but it's you need to immerse yourself into this. You know, you can't just offer advice that is from a textbook. It needs to actually make sense. Like you were saying, you know, for you it was look yourself right, and then, you know, just get on with it. You know? But whereas in maybe more, let's just say, European cultures, it's something that is seen as the norm.
Yes.
You know, it's something that you go there, you maybe have a monthly check-in. That's how.
And these norms, I would imagine, can possibly present barriers as well, right? I mean, barriers to so many different things. I look at barriers to even just diagnosing yourself with depression. Like, no, I don't have depression because my culture says there's no such thing. It doesn't exist. Aluta, have you experienced this? Have you seen this in your example as well? Because for me, the downside of me not knowing that depression existed was that I couldn't deal with my feelings because there was no such thing as that. Like, just push that aside, right?
Absolutely.
Do you find this being a barrier? Firstly, not even being able to engage with your feelings, possibly a cultural barrier as well?
Absolutely. I mean, as individuals, you know, you can't explain behavior in the absence of beliefs, traditions, religion, you know, and all those stuff. So it's important to have a clear conceptual understanding of your client, you know, of your patient. So, you know, in some cultures, they don't emphasize that men should speak up about their emotions. You know, you should toughen up, you should solve things on your own. And as a result, you know, whenever you're going through a tough time as a man, you feel like I should solve these problems on my own up until you get to a point where you can't anymore, and you might even, you know, consider the less ideal way, which is suicide, because you've been carrying this for too long.
And you don't want to let people down or save that like, sort of feeling and emotion. Maybe for me the question is like, when it comes to, and maybe men in general, because it feels like this is like this toxic masculinity which we've been preconditioned to not deal with our emotion, not deal with our feelings. How do we change that, Aluta? Have you experienced a difficulty with getting people to accept and understand that emotion firstly before even getting to the point of identifying depression or anything like that?
Yeah, I think we need to change the narrative and allow a safe space for men to be vulnerable. You know, so you find a lot of men saying, or even women saying, a man who expresses his emotions is a red flag. You know, so we need to create a space where men can, you know, feel like I can talk about my feelings and talk about what's upsetting me in a space that won't be judgmental, you know, and that will also facilitate some therapeutic outcomes that will allow you to, you know, live your life in a meaningful way.
I like that, man. Let's make talking about our feelings cool. Let's make it suave, you know what I mean? Like, I've got emotions. I like that. So what advice would you give? I know there's so much going on, you know, like throw it all at you now, sum it up. But what sort of advice would you give for someone that's maybe coming from a culture that has these Sorry, actually, apologies. So many names this morning, Ash. If we've got someone coming from this sort of culture and they have this barrier, but they have an issue and they come to you and they're like, look, I don't know what's going on. Life is just like, I'm struggling to deal right now. Life just sucks. What do you do? What do you advise them to deal with in that moment?
No, it's a great question because we're going to have to tailor every approach to that individual. And I think a good place to start is, you know, therapists, whatever, you know, environment you're working with or in, you need to understand, like, the cultural environment. You need to understand how culture is going to impact that presentation of symptoms. And also understand that people in themselves may stigmatize themselves. So there's going to be a lot of levels to work through. And for a lot of people, they do perceive that the only type of help out there is walking into a clinic, into a therapist's office. But nowadays, with technology, there's so many resources out there that can help us access these, you know, this information, resources in a private way. And it also gives you a lot more sort of room to find a clinician, a therapist that you vibe with, essentially, that understands your background. You know, myself, like, I do really well with clients that are coming from my background, that, you know, we share that same sort of understanding of how we grew up. So I think that's important. So yeah, you know, I'd encourage people, if your family or your culture stigmatizes it, but you're feeling like something's not right, go online, educate yourself, and there's so many free resources out there. So yeah.
I absolutely love that. Ladies and gents, thank you so much. That was an incredible conversation. I wish we could just have 3 hours just to unpack this all, because I know how much insight you have and I know how much you want to help, but I think that's why we're here. We've got these incredible faces that you can reach out to. And of course, we also have that SADC line. So it's a suicide hotline. You can call the number 0800 567 567 if you are dealing with any of these issues. And anything mental health related, you can use the hotline 0800 456 789. It's okay to have feelings. It's normal. We need to engage with it. We need to discuss it. And we've got incredible people like this here to help. So this is your encouragement to go seek help and improve your life altogether.